Hello there, Graham again. Today I'm going to show you what I've got in my spares kit for my JJ-CCR. I hope you find it interesting. Let's have a look. Alright, I've got a spare oxygen sensor. You can see it's in date, February 2022. Yes! I carry a spare high pressure hose. In GUE we use a long one, so if you need a long one, you need a spare. And I've got a couple of very short MyFlex hoses which are sometimes useful in the GUE configuration. It's quite good to have some spare checklists, and I have some more of those scattered around in my equipment. Alright, let's have a look at the precious things. This is a Choicey bag that my friend gave me, and she makes them in China. I use it for my makeup usually, but in this case I've got it stuffed full of precious things for the JJ. A mouthpiece. It's pretty important you get the right ones. These are made by Divex and you can get them directly from JJ. It's quite important to make sure that this orifice is the right size. A normal scuba mouthpiece, if we see them together, you'll see that the JJ one is bigger, and that helps quite a lot with the work of breathing. And usually keep a spare open circuit one on hand. I've got a solenoid. Probably don't need the solenoid unless you know how to change them. Very important to have some cleaning disinfectant. This is Virkon. It's now hideously expensive because of what's happened over the last 2 years, but I'm lucky enough to have these from before. And very important to make sure you label your stuff to stop pikeys nicking everything. Maybe your dive buddies are better than mine, but mine are utter thieves. I've got some tubular webbing, which often comes in handy if you're putting hose clamps on things and prevents dissimilar metals touching each other, and then you don't get galvanic corrosion. A collection of SAF batteries, and these are used in the computer and to power the HUD, so those are pretty useful. You need to be careful to get the right ones, because if you buy some off eBay, they can be fake and they've got virtually no capacity. So the first thing to double check is that you're buying from a reputable supplier. I usually get mine directly from JJ. Then we've got some 9-volt ultralife batteries, and those are used to power the onboard computer and the actual brain of the rebreather, so it's quite useful to have some of those. I buy them in blocks of 10. You don't need to replace them very often, but go back to my previous comment about my pikey dive buddies, and they're always running out and stealing mine, so it's worthwhile having a few on hand. Gold. You always need more gold. In reality, this is just 1mm braided nylon line, and I use that to attach the mouthpiece to the JJ. It's quite nice because it gives a circular seal as opposed to a cable tie which has a pinch point. Sometimes you get a little bit of drippage into your mouthpiece. Nobody wants drippy things in their mouth, do they? And most importantly, that's gold. What else have we got in here? It's quite useful to have a stage band. Somebody's obviously nicked the 40 cubic foot version. I like to have a few of these on hand, which are DIN plugs, so if you're travelling in Europe you should actually plug your tanks. I'm not sure if it's illegal in Germany to travel without plugs in tanks, but I had been told that, so I keep a few on hand, and it's useful to prevent you losing all that precious helium that you've got in your tanks. DIN O-rings. These are the Scuba Pro ones. They are far superior to the ones that I find in other regulators. They're much harder, and when they drop out, the colour makes them virtually impossible to find, so it's worthwhile having a few of those on hand in an Apex spare kit bag, interestingly enough. Some assorted shrink wrap, that's often handy when you're changing a solenoid or various other soldering things. That's a tool for disassembling the seat on the ADV. You probably don't need that, and it is an utter pain in the neck to change that seat, so don't mess around with that unless you really know what you're doing. This is a super cool product. You definitely need some of this on hand. It's type A Terrade. You can buy it in small packs. I bought a large roll and I just carry a little bit of around, but you can repair your counterlungs if you manage to punch them somehow. and you can repair dry suits and other useful stuff where you want to patch leaks. The type A is the important one. Follow the instructions and you can get a nice good repair on your counterlugs, which could be a loss of awesomeness. Some C-clips for the Lola manifold. As you know, I've got some Nautex which don't need these, but I do have some Lola manifolds, and these are pretty hard to find in normal tool shops, so I carry a bunch of them around because they're always failing. These are made of 316 Chinesium, and obviously they last forever. FFS3. Nobody likes to get blown whilst they're diving, so hopefully the wind doesn't pick up again. Alright. I've got some O-rings and a shim which go in the hoses for the JJ. I've got a little box of precious things. Some shearwater O-rings, some snorkels for valves, some O-rings for the ADV ports, I think those are. And various connectors, and something you really should try and pick up if you can is some hose repair kits or re-swageable hose ends. Basically you can take any medium pressure hose and turn it into any length you want. Pretty useful if you blow a hose. You can cut off the offending few centimetres of the hose, re-swage an end on, and you can therefore continue being awesome and going diving. So those are pretty useful. This is a pretty useful do-widget, whatever you call it, doohickey. It can turn a normal scuba hose into a low pressure inflator, so that's pretty useful. I've got the 3-to-1 adapter from the JJ, an elbow if I ever need that. Put the lid back on to stop that blowing away. I mean, I go through phases of trying to organise all this stuff, and obviously that ends in disaster. Some port plugs, another one of those repair things, a bolt extender if you're using halcyon back plates, some O2 grease, a Schrader tool and some Schrader valves, and then some SPG swivel O-rings. Those are always getting damaged or leaky, so it's worthwhile having a few of those in your kit. I think I got that for free from a dive show once, and that's been pretty useful for keeping little bits and pieces together. I've got some plastic washers which prevent galvanic corrosion on the canister. You'll want a few of these, which are the clips for the hoses, and I've made a video to show you how to change those. It's always worth having a few of those in your spares kit. A 2-to-1 splitter that I just had left over from another project, so that just stays in my spares kit, causing me loads of excess baggage obviously, so that's pretty useful to have. Make sure that you can repair and replace hoses as you need to, and any misguided fools that have got cable ties on there, you can actually replace those for them with the proper ones. A couple of O-ring picks, brass, so they don't damage the surfaces of the regulators you might be picking O-rings out of, and this one here is actually super useful in conjunction with those, so I like to keep those together in my spares kit. Also useful for stabbing pikeys that are trying to steal your dive kit. Make sure you get them in the eyes though, they really appreciate that. These are absolutely awesome. They're Knipex, I think that's how you say it. Sorry to my German friends if I butchered that. But basically it's an adjustable wrench that you don't have to mess around. Super good, and you can really apply some torque to any nuts that you might want to loosen. Super nice, super expensive, and well worth it, and obviously labelled again to prevent the pikeys. More traditional adjustable wrench, that's stainless steel, that can go in my pocket, and I've had that custom made, and that's a couple of years old, no signs of corrosion yet. Obviously I don't know enough sea diving, but branded to stop people nicking it, so very important. And a double ender there. Spare A battery, you never know when you're going to need one of those. DSV O-ring kit. I'll talk about those in a second. Some more spare shims for the bottom of the scrubber, so stop you getting all dust through your mouthpiece. A full O-ring kit, super useful if you're doing servicing. It's got every O-ring you need for the JJ in there, so that is very useful. I actually sourced some O-rings of the correct size for the head of the rebreather, and those are pretty useful. You might be able to zoom in on that. They're 140 millimeters by 3.53, and they're nitrile 70 Shore hardness. I think those are the correct ones, but they work okay in a pinch. Obviously, I prefer to use the factory ones if I can, but sometimes you go through those head O-rings a bit quicker than everything else. A little bit of this Narcox, made by Narct at 90 or supplied by Narct at 90. Little O2 grease, super nice for keeping the O-rings on your head greased, so you can get in and out the head when you're changing the scrubber. I've got some plugs for the solenoid and the O2 hose. You certainly want those to stop any detritus getting into your first stage, blowing it through the solenoid, therefore causing a failure of the solenoid because the seat's dirty. So those are pretty useful. I've got the flow stop that comes on the CE unit. It's useful to have on hand. Maybe sometime you want that. Random Allen key, hex wrench for you Americans. Not really sure why that's in there. It's probably missing from one of my other Allen keys sets somewhere else. Counterlung spanner, again labelled correctly. Stop the pikeys having a way with your equipment. Another one of these, put that in the bag just to appease the OCDC. Anyway, the obsessive compulsive cleaners amongst you, which I'm obviously not. Alright, that's virtually done. What else have we got in here? Some more O-rings. These can go together with the other O-rings. These are hose O-rings. Pop them in there. And then I don't have to order them by mistake when I realise I've actually got some. I've got a battery for my transmitter, which I use on the dry suit gas. Not easily available at every supermarket. You'll probably want one of these. I happen to have 3 just in case. 1 is none, 2 is 1, and 3 is awesome. Those are the OPVs for the first stage on your oxygen bottle of the JJ. You certainly want those on hand. I've got an ADV diaphragm, quite useful. A friend of mine managed to lose the cap there and found out on his way to 70 meters that the ADV wasn't working. Interestingly enough, it worked in the pre-dive checks, but then somehow stopped working in between the pre-dive checks and going diving. And then I've got some flapper valves there for the DSV. A few bucks, dollars, pounds, whatever currency you're working in, that can certainly save your life and controls the direction of the gas in the rebreather. If one of those fails, you're going to be circular breathing and you're going to get a CO2 hit, even with a functioning scrubber otherwise. And then, highly important, we want some oxygen labels for our oxygen bottle. We want some tire gas labels for our tire gas or our dry suit tank. Obviously it's a bit of an in-joke, but certainly useful so that fill stations don't put the wrong one in the wrong one. Nobody wants things in the wrong hole, do they? So not good. And then some more stickers, anti-pikey stickers. Alright, so that's everything in here, and now I'm going to try and fit everything back into this, which obviously isn't going to work, so I won't bore you with that on camera. Alright, thank you very much for listening. I hope you find that useful, and you can see what I generally carry in my spares kit. A lot of those things you might not necessarily need, particularly if one of your buddies has got it. I'd usually like to let my buddies do the stockpiling of oxygen cells and just steal them as and when I need. Luckily the JJ cells are super reliable, so you don't have to worry about holding too many of those. Alright, if you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and don't forget to smash that like button. Oh yeah, subscribe too. Awesome!